You want to bring him in and talk a little high school sports. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Sully, how are you today?
Hey, man, thanks for taking a few minutes with us.
No problem at all.
As always. I guess to start out with, give us some of your recollections on Ken Leary. Not a guy I'm familiar with. I've only been doing this for a couple of years now, but apparently a pretty legendary basketball coach in the area. What do you remember most about his career?
Oh, absolutely. Ken Leary, over 500 wins, third best in the Cape Atlantic League, really coached some of the best teams that I've ever played down in the Cape Atlantic League. You talk about, this was before my time, but the 1974-75 team that had Reggie Miller. And then, of course, I covered the 95-96 team that had, Jamar Perry at point guard, Clifton Jones at forward, Rob Strickland at center, Noel Gonzalez at guard. Really one of the most tremendous teams of all time. And Kenny was a guy whose teams played, an up-tempo style. And I think, Jamar Perry, in the story we did on after Kenny passed this past Monday, said it best. He really gave his team, his players the freedom to flourish. And what I remember about Kenny is they played a big game against Shawnee at the Battle by the Bay, I think in either 95 or 96, and Pleasantville beat Shawnee. And I remember Kenny kind of literally jumping over the Pleasantville bench and into the Pleasantville crowd to sort of celebrate the win. So, that kind of showed you the passion that he had for the game of basketball right there.
What made him such a good coach?
Well, I just think, he had tremendous players, and he knew the game, and he was a tremendous player at Ocean City and up at Boston University. He used to tell, I think he used to tell Clifton Jones, who was, a 6'6", 6'7" forward, went on to play at Old Dominion, and Kenny was about 5'7", and Kenny would tell Clifton Jones all the time that if I had your height, I'd be in the NBA. He just knew the game, knew what players knew what players wanted, and he just let players play, and they played outstanding defense, and that's what really, at that time, and Pleasantville still has an excellent basketball program, but at that time, Pleasantville was a premier team. I mean, they won back-to-back state titles in 95 and 96. I think you went to 4 state title games in the 70s. They were really one of the, high echelon programs in the state of New Jersey.
Now, I know you and I always have some fun interviewing Coach Gene Allen of Atlantic City after high school games. What was it like to interview Coach Leary?
Well, Kenny was a character. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I mean, he was he was an original guy. He was a character over there at Pleasantville. He was funny. He could be sarcastic, but he was a great guy and a guy who just said it like it is. I mean, Kenny did not mince words. I mean, he just told you exactly what it was. One of my other memories of Kenny is Pleasantville won, the state championship, and it was either the 95 or 96 championship, and they have a Tournament of Champions luncheon. And at the time, for whatever reason, Pleasantville won the state championship, and they only had 7 players at the game. To this day, I'm not sure why they only had 7 players, but they had the right 7 players at the game because they won easy. And at the Tournament Champions luncheon, he got up and told everybody, that people are just wondering why we only had 7 players. Well, if you don't have talent, we don't want you, he told everybody. So, I mean, that sort of kind of right there was like, whoa, but Kenny didn't mince words, didn't hide words, when it came to that sort of stuff.
Sounds like one of those guys where you write the story and your editor's like, did this guy really say that?
Right,
exactly. Should we print this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but, he's a great guy and a great coach who really did an awful lot for the community of Pleasantville and Pleasantville High School. The other thing about Kenny is he really, yes, what made him a great coach, he put in time. I can remember going down to Pleasantville in the summer. He would open up the Pleasantville gym. He would be at the Pleasantville Rec Center, just about every day in the summer, giving those kids an opportunity to play. and really hone their skills. And that was before you really had, the AAU circuit or the year-round basketball circuit. So, what made him a great coach? Time. He put in time with those, Pleasantville kids, and he really, sacrificed his own time, to really help them be successful and hone their games.
I'm sure definitely a tough loss for the entire South Jersey basketball community, and great to get some thoughts from you on his career. Let's turn our attention real quick to high school baseball. The first week is in the books. Anything surprising as far as you're concerned?
Well, I think you kind of look, you look at the Lower Cape May baseball team off to a 3-0 start in that Cape Atlantic League National Conference down there. Of course, Lower Cape May has a good baseball tradition. Matt Caesar, of course, with the Chicago Cubs, Lower Cape May graduate. But you kind of look at Lower out of the gate here in the first week with a 3-0 start, big 7-1 win over Cedar Creek yesterday. Justin Nichols with the big bases loaded double. The Hill kid is Ryan Hill, 2-0 on the mound, 7 strikeouts yesterday. So one thing stands out to me in the Cape Atlantic League, you kind of wondered who was going to be that team to sort of emerge in that national conference. And at least for the first week, it was the Lower Cape May Tigers right there.
Yeah, and getting over to the Cal American, man, what a division that's going to be this year. I mean, you're looking at a team like Oakcrest is 1-2, but they could very well be 3-0. Prep's off to a great start. Ocean City's off to a great start. Even Millville really coming out of the gate strong.
Right. I mean, I think that division is one of the best divisions, not only in South Jersey, but also in the state. And I think you could have a very, a situation that you had, I guess, this is 2016, I believe. The years are beginning to blend together. But I think like 2014, you had Mainland, who was sub-500, make a run and win a state title. Last year, you had Holy Spirit come out of that division in 2015, sub-500 at the start of the state tournament and win a state title. That division, you're going to be battle-tested coming out of that division. And any one of those teams is capable of getting hot in May and June and really going deep in the state tournament. But again, and what stands out there is the pitching. You look at the pitching in that division. Nate Eigenman of Millville throws a no-hitter against Mainland. The next day, Sean Mooney throws a no-hitter of Ocean City, throws a no-hitter against McGarry. You talk about the pitching that St. Augustine has, the pitching that Mainland has. That's what really stands out about that division.
Yeah, tough break for Mike Vestori over at St. Aug, but they got a guy really stepping up in Morganweck there.
Right, he pitched very well yesterday against Atlantic City, and of course they've still got Bill Chilari, who's over there, who's headed to Duke. That's the other story of the first week of the baseball season is kind of the injuries that you had. Unfortunately for Mike Vestoria, who was bound for Maryland, great pitcher out of St. Augustine. He underwent surgery. I guess he's going to be out for the season. You have Kyle Gerace kind of hurt his lower arm lifting weights, and kind of a freakish thing, is going to miss about 2 weeks just as kind of more of a precaution thing than anything. And you've got Buddy Kennedy of Millville, with kind of some shoulder fatigue there. So you've got some top pitchers, kind of on the shelf for the first couple of weeks, at least in Kennedy and Gerace's sake, the first couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, and we just had Mike Bailone on the show, and he was saying, his philosophy is, hey, next man up, and that's something you have to deal with in a short high school season. If a guy does get injured, 2 weeks is pretty much almost a third of the season, so you got to try to find a way to work around that, and it seems like a lot of these teams are doing just that.
Well, it's got pitching depth, and all you had to do was look at the Mainland Millville game on Monday. I think everybody went there expecting to see Buddy Kennedy of Millville against Kyle Gerace of Mainland, and what you got was Nate Eigenman of Millville against Anthony Capasso, and Eigenman threw a no-hitter. And although Millville won the game 7-0, Capasso pitched great for Mainland, only allowed 2 runs in 6 innings. Millville got their 5 runs off a Mainland reliever in the 7th inning. So that's the other thing. It's not only that these teams have one really outstanding pitcher. There's pitching depth on a lot of these good teams in the Cape Atlantic League American Conference.
What about just in general, Mike? I know you have your pulse on all the sports What's the big story so far the first week of the high school season, whether it be baseball, softball, lacrosse, anything really sticking out in your mind?
Well, I think the big story for me this first week of the season, and it's going to be the big story up until the the draft, is the Jason Groom kid out of Barnegat. We were up there Tuesday at Barnegat. The 6'5" left-hander, top prospect in the country, could be one of the top picks. The Phillies have that number one pick in the draft. GM Matt Klentek was at the game. About 100 Major League scouts watching Jason Groom pitch against Point Pleasant Borough. Didn't disappoint. Throws a fastball 92, 93, 94 miles an hour in his first outing of the year in 40-degree weather in a windy Barnegat. Threw a curveball that broke so sharply over the plate, made kind of fans gasp at how sharply it broke. Struck out 10 batters. Allowed one ground ball single in 4 innings. Really kind of lived up to what people had said about him. I think he's scheduled to pitch again on Monday. I think every time Jason Groom goes to the mound, it's going to be an event. And I would really encourage fans that if they want to see probably one of the best high school pitchers in the country, and a kid that maybe one day you might have to pay $30 to go see at Citizens Bank Park. Get out and, follow our coverage about Jason Groom and get out and watch that kid pitch. So to me, that's the big story of the spring sports season right now.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. My sister lives in Tuckerton, and her son's 9 years old in Little League, and she even texted me this week, hey, when's that kid from Barnegat pitching?
Right. He's supposed to pitch Monday at home against Central Regional. That's the schedule now. But if you get a chance, and then I think he's supposed to pitch Saturday up in Monmouth County against Red Bank Catholic, who's one of the top teams in the state, in a big sort of showcase event up in Red Bank. So, I would say, one of the things, you don't want to say that Jason Groom is going to be, a Mike Trout, but, he's going to be selected in the first round of the Major League Draft. And the last player from this area to do that was Mike Trout. And, if we could all go back in time, we'd probably go watch every one of Mike Trout's games he played when he was a senior at Millville. So, this is an opportunity that you don't want to, you got an opportunity, you got something special here. You want to take advantage of it and just see it, and enjoy it as a sports fan.
They might have to start running some 50-50 raffles with the fan base they're going to have at those games.
It's funny, it's the first high school baseball game I've ever been to where the police monitored a special parking area for scouts and media. So, that gives you an idea of what, what's kind of going on. And it was really just a great atmosphere. It's got to be exciting for really and Barnegat is a very good baseball team. I mean, after Jason Groom came out of the game, Jared Casco went to the mound, and Groom left the game with the score 0-0. Casco came in through 3 no-hit innings. He's going to NJIT and won the game. Barnegat won the game 2-0. So, we have Barnegat number 2 in our Press Elite 11. They're a team that, is going to contend for a state Group 2 title. So, it's not just Groom. There's a lot of talent up at Barnegat, and it's got to be exciting. It's an exciting atmosphere up there. Big crowd, a lot of energy, which you don't always get at high school baseball games. So it's got to be exciting for the Barnegat players to sort of play in that type of atmosphere.
Good stuff, Mike. Appreciate you jumping on board. We'll catch up with you soon.
Absolutely. No problem, Sully. Have a good day. Thanks.
All right. Have a good weekend, man.
See you later.
That was Mike McGarry of the Press of Atlantic City.